was in industry. We were shipped to a city and we had to work. We also lived in camps and we had to work in a factory every day. We had to eat our meals there. And one day we had our soup and it was shipped out, and one girl found a mouse in there and she went to the kitchen to tell him, and the woman, she was Polish, one of the people that Hitler had brought into Germany. She said we couldn't help it. We tried to pick it out and the tail broke off. So she was sorry that had happened to her. But those were things we had to live with. And then when the war started, that was, I always remember that because it was September 1, 1939, and Hitler had marched into Poland. He took over. That was easy for him. There was no resistance. People were surprised, and his troops marched into the houses and settled in. Can you imagine a troop marching into Murphysboro and settling every house? You can't do anything about it. You know, you can't fight them. And so that was the first country he took over. And that's when he brought the women to Germany to work in industry and where the men were gone. And the guys were taken prisoner. Then he went to Norway, which is a country of beautiful people. And he thought they were so nice. He would bring some of those girls, those Norwegian girls, to Germany so they could marry some of the Germans and bring forth wonderful people like the Norwegians, but they were not willing to go along with any of that. So then he went around the circle there, and he went to Holland, and he went to Belgium, and they all had different cultures and languages, and nobody wanted to get into that with the Germans, but Hitler had them all. We had, after the war, there were people from Belgium that worked in Germany and that would come out over. And then he just went around, and France was one of his victories, actually. The French had built a wall, the Maginot Line, and they thought that would keep them out, and the Germans went right through that. When nations build walls, it's not a guarantee that they will hold up. And then he went, well, France was a big country, but they went in there. But in all the bombings they did, they kept Paris intact. They did not destroy the main, the Louvre and some of the other buildings that are famous. And so they settled in two countries in Germany, in Europe they couldn't touch. They were neutral countries. That was Luxembourg and Switzerland. And they are the richest countries in Europe today. And so we were just pulled into that. We couldn't say anything. And my father, Hitler had planned to get rid of the Jews, and the next on his list were the Christians. And so people that were really confessing Christian were sought after, and some of them were put in camps. There was one famous pastor, Pastor Niebuhr, who was in a concentration camp, but then he got out later. It was hard to get out from under Hitler's fight. When people were caught, they were caught. Myself, I was, when my high school education was over, I had to go to this work dienst I mentioned before, and that was, I was supposed to be there 1 year. But when the 1 year was over and I should be dismissed, they wouldn't let me go. They said, you are teaching material. We'll send you to camp, to a teaching camp, where you learn a lot of things that help you and help us. Said. So I was shipped away. Never could go home, and I didn't know what was going on at home. And I was in there for half a year, and then I was sent to a little town to be in leadership of a camp like I had started with. And I had freedom, I could go, but the bombers came, that they would bomb the city, and always jumped in a ditch when I see one of them coming. And one time there was a guy that had a plane crash, and he crashed right in the middle of a plaza in the town. And the women were coming, there were no men anymore. The women were coming with a hose and the pitchforks and whatever they could find, they were going to get after them. When the poor guy got out of the plane, they all looked and they said, "Oh, he is so handsome, we can't touch him." And they let him go. And they just took him into the authorities, and he probably was taken prisoner. And that was one of the funny things that happened to us, because people are human. They look at you and see what you look like. And if you are beautiful, you will be acknowledged in any country, more or less. And I had, and then it was coming closer to the end of the war. 1945, in the spring, the fighting stopped. And during all that time, I want to mention that one time in the parsonage where I lived, we had 9 bombs in our backyard. They fell, they bombed all the time, and we had to go into shelters. And while that was going on, our neighbor came running and he said, "Come help me, come help me. My wife and my 2 children are in our bomb shelter." They had made a big, a home-built one, and they are dead. And this happened all over, all over. People didn't know what tomorrow would bring, and they prayed.